what's going on, everybody? This is Kory Woods, your Detroit Lions beat reporter with the Woodward Sports Network, checking in with your Roar on Woodward Report. And this is going to be a different one today because right now I have somebody who knows these draft prospects a lot better than I do. We have an actual draft scout in the building. Russell Brown, what's going on, my man?
Kory, my man, how we doing? Thanks for having me here and talking a little Lions, talk a little draft, man.
Oh, yeah, we've been talking about getting this done for a long time. Now we finally got into it. And, let's just go ahead and get right down to it. We just had some breaking news. The Detroit Lions are apparently releasing Trey Flowers, before the start of the new season. We know he was an edge rusher here. We know there's been talk about the Lions getting an edge rusher with the number 2 overall pick. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire.
Yeah.
Do you think that pretty much kind of tipped their hand that they're leaning into either the Kayvon Thibodeau or Aiden Hutchinson sweepstakes?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, maybe they don't get Aiden, but I think you settle for Kayvon. I know a lot of the times people are talking about taking Jordan Davis at 2 or taking Malik Willis at 2, and those are just risky picks. Whereas with these edge rushers, I think you have a lot more potential for success. I mean, you're talking double-digit sack production from probably both prospects. Obviously, we have to find out what Jacksonville does with that first pick as far as are they taking Aiden, are they going offensive line? But either way, I mean, you have to take an edge rusher, I think, at 2. I would be surprised if they went in another direction.
That's what I was saying with a lot of people, especially with the way the defense is going. I think Trey Flowers being released was something that a lot of people saw coming. The writing was on the wall, making a lot of money. The availability just wasn't there. And, along with the production, I mean, he was almost kind of like a Lou Domas. He was good when he played, but when is he going to play?
Right.
So, unfortunate that he's out, that he's going to be out. But, let's talk about those 2 guys, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at tape on both of them, and one thing I do see about Aiden Hutchinson, the guy has a motor. He does not quit. I mean, from whistle to whistle, he's playing his butt off. And I do see him, some flashes of him being this freakish athlete. This great athlete, I should say, great athlete. But when I look at Kayvon Thibodeau, when people are saying that his motor is not there, I'm wondering maybe is there something I'm missing? Because for me, when I'm looking at Thibodeau on tape, I'm looking at a guy who just kind of it looks like he's making it look so easy because he's such a freak athlete that it looks like his motor is being questioned. Because I'm just seeing him do rip and swim moves through his guys, just simply just powering off the line, getting in between defenders, passing them, throwing them out of his direction. And what am I missing about Kayvon's motor that he's starting to slip now? Apparently,
I think it's more so in between certain run plays. There's times where the ball's being ran away from him and he's not necessarily pursuing to the football with that backside pursuit as consistent as you would like to see him do. But when you look at, potentially with Aiden, it's it's constantly go, 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 and he's constantly getting after it. And it's one of those things where I think with Aiden, you're getting that guy that's just constantly getting after the quarterback, after the running back. And I think that's the thing that separates them the most. But also I think when you look at Aiden Hutchinson compared to Kayvon, you see that there's that plethora of pass rush moves. I think he can translate speed to power. He can hit that swim move. He can long arm. Despite the arm length concerns, he can do those things where I'm not saying Kayvon can't. Kayvon's got great lower body flexibility, really fluid hips. He shows a really good ghost rush move off the edge at times. He did it against UCLA quite a bit. But I just think that's the thing that separates Aiden, where that backside pursuit is constant, and you see those bigger splash plays in key moments where he overpowers guys and just takes them for a ride. And I think that's just, when you see that all the time, or it's coming out now, it's like, man, I want that because I can get that on Sundays.
That is a really great explanation of it. And now that you said that, I'm going to go ahead and have to go back and look at it from that perspective. That's some real top-notch stuff. So if they're at that number 2 pick, and let's just say the Jaguars just go ahead and take Neal still with you for the first pick, do you see them passing on Aiden at that moment? Do you think Aiden would be a lock to the Lions?
I mean, I can't say a lock for sure, I've heard anything, but I would say one of those 2 players is the lock. I mean, it would be hard for them to pass up on probably Aiden, just simply because we live in kind of we're kind of getting back to normal with life, but COVID is still a thing, and it still was a thing during a lot of this pre-draft process for these guys. So I think with Aiden, it's one of those things where you're going down the street to Divine Child. I mean, you're not going far. You're figuring him out. You're probably talking to his dad who's working at Beaumont Hospital. I mean, you're figuring things out. There's a lot of positives of him staying close to home, and he understands, hey, this team needs a guy like me. I helped rejuvenate Michigan football to a conference championship into the college football playoff. I could do that here with the Detroit Lions. So I think there's going to be a perfect marriage. And I was talking to some of the guys here at Woodward Sports before we got on, and like they were saying, Dan Campbell and him would be like fishing buddies. And it's like, dude, like you could see it completely. They're going to get coffees together, making bunk beds together like stepbrothers. Like it makes perfect sense.
Now, what about the Kyle Hamilton sweepstakes? There are people that are saying, hey, maybe the Lions might go after Hamilton at number 2 or try to trade back and get him. What do you think about Kyle Hamilton?
I think just by looking at Brad Holmes and the way that he dissects the draft, I mean, I'm not opposed to Kyle Hamilton by any means, but I'm not going to sit here and say he's this generational talent. I think he is, quite a unicorn when it boils down to it. But I'm not going to sit here and say, like, he's somebody that is the best player in the draft, because I don't agree with that.
Yeah, there are some people that are out there that believe that he is the best player in the draft. I've seen it from several fans, even on my many timelines. They believe that should be the guy the Lions go after. Me, no offense to Jeff Okudah, I think that taking another secondary that high might be a little bit of PTSD for Lions fans right now. I also don't think that, just in my perspective, I don't think that the secondary, while the Lions could improve in that area, I don't think that was the area that needed the night and day improvement. That front seven, that line, they need some weapons in that department. Yeah,
and I think when you look at Brad Holmes and the way he drafts, he finds value in this draft, in any draft, and he found it with, Amon-Ra St. Brown. In previous drafts, I mean, they took Taylor Rapp out of Washington at the Rams, and they found him in the 2nd or 3rd round. Kind of the same thing here. Like, you can take a good safety, in that 2nd or 3rd round range and be just fine. You could do it at the back end of the 1st round at 32, whether it's Daxton Hill or Lewis Sine out of Georgia. Maybe you look at Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State. I think there's quite a few safeties here. And even, I don't know if he'll be there at 66, but if you waited into that 3rd round, maybe there's a chance like Jalen Petrie from Baylor, who we both saw down at the Senior Bowl, kind of ball out during practice. Like, maybe that's the guy you get at 66.
Just so you know, I randomly ended up having a conversation with Jalen Petrie about becoming a Detroit Lion. Let me see if I can find that clip and throw it out there. If I still have that clip in my phone, I'm definitely going to put it out there. So we'll leave that right there. But there's one more guy that people were talking about the Lions, just say, getting a number 2. And I think this would be the one where it might set everybody's heads on fire. You already know which direction I'm going.
I know where you're going.
Malik Willis at number 2. I'm not gonna lie, I like the idea of the Lions going ahead and taking Willis. I do. From what I saw out there, yes, his accuracy definitely some work on there. But one thing that I did see at the Senior Bowl, and even some clips I saw at Liberty, it didn't look like he always had a clean pocket.
Right.
It looked like he was always like just running for his life every time the ball was snapped. And obviously, the Lions have a great offensive line. That would not be an issue here for him. So, just of course, outside of adjusting to the league. But, I was thinking that if the Lions took him in the draft, I would not be mad. Sit him for a year, see what happens with Goff, bring him in. But at number 2 is when you kind of people had me like, I don't know about getting him at number 2. What do you think about the Lions potentially trading up, maybe that number 32 pick and some other draft capital to move up into that top 15 and try to grab Willis?
I'm not opposed to the idea. I just don't know if he'll fall that far. I mean, you look at Seattle, they're at 9 now.
Yeah.
Did they make that move so they could put themselves in the running for either Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis? That makes a lot of sense. But if they did it at 2, I wouldn't be upset about it, because I think you need to upgrade from Jared Goff. But I am still curious what Jared Goff can do with another year in this offense and system, getting the timing down with new receivers and everything else. I mean, that throws every quarterback off. So you go from throwing to Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp to throwing to a rookie and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, who you kind of had some relationship with before, but not as consistent. And you're throwing a bunch of no names out there. And I think that's the thing. Like, if they can bring in another weapon, whether it's maybe Allen Robinson now with the extra $10 million in cap space, maybe they bring him home, maybe they draft a guy. But I feel like with this rebuild, they're not going to force anything. And like, that's the thing. Like, they're not going to force themselves to take a defensive tackle at 2 when they took 2 defensive tackles back-to-back last year. They're not going to force themselves with a quarterback when they traded for Jared Goff. They traded a Super Bowl winning quarterback for Jared Goff, despite getting draft capital for that. They got Jared Goff. They're going to put a little bit of faith in him, I think, another year, just to know that next year maybe they can get that sure thing. But if they took Malik, I'm not opposed to it. You mentioned, he got sacked a ton. I think, PTSD set in for him when he was in the pocket a lot. When you watch him against Syracuse, he's immediately being met by defenders. He had to scramble. And I'm intrigued with what he can do with the football, but I just don't know if they would do it at 2.
Yeah, that's my same mindset right there. Just at 2, I don't know if he would be the guy at 2. If they are able to somehow work some kind of magic and get back in that early slots to grab him, hey, more power to you. Because I'll just say like this: as far as that goes, I'm gonna trust the process with Brad Holmes. So far, first year, I'll say he nailed on most of the draft picks.
Right.
So, and also great point about Jared Goff, and that's the one thing that I wanted to tell everybody. I'm not sitting up here saying that Jared Goff is the best thing since sliced bread, but it's in the Lions' best interest that they make Jared Goff successful, do everything to make him successful, because I believe that if Jared Goff is successful here, there are other things you can do with those picks. And to your point, when he came into the Lions, he wasn't supposed to be having his 3rd, 4th, and 5th options as his 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So off rip, the season already started off the rails. But while we're talking about those options, those wideouts, there's been much been said about guys like Drake London possibly being a target of the Lions at that later pick, or I've been hearing now Christian Watson. And some people don't think that London will be there. They're thinking that Watson will be the more realistic target. Do you see the Lions going wide out with either that 32 or 34 pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly in the cards. Obviously, we'll see what comes forward with free agency as far as who they sign or anything like that. I mean, if they bring in a receiver through free agency, they might not force their hand early at the position because it is so deep, and they might look in that 3rd or 4th round for Khalil Shakir out of Boise State, who's 6 foot, 190, probably one of the better route runners and probably the more veteran release package receivers in this draft. So you're kind of getting a ready-made receiver regardless. Maybe his upside isn't as high, but regardless, you're getting that guy. So maybe they wait there. But if they did, I could see Christian Watson at 32 or 34. I don't think Drake London will be there, if I'm being honest. I think he's probably one of the 12 or 15 best players in this draft, and he's my top receiver. I mean, you're talking about a 6'4", 215-pound, 220-pound receiver that can go out there and catch jump balls, 50-50 balls with great body control, got the basketball background, was a really good high school basketball player, even played at USC, and he's just a natural athlete. And I think, these teams from the 10s through the 20s, you're talking Cleveland, you're looking at Philadelphia, maybe even New Orleans. These teams are going to be looking at that wide receiver probably. Sure, we could see Olave, Wilson, a handful of guys go, and maybe London would fall, but I would just be a little surprised at this point.
What would make Watson the target for you? Like, if you're the Lions and you see Watson there, you're taking him? If he's available at one of those 32 or 34, what will make him attractive to you?
Yeah, well, so I have 6 first-round grades on the receivers. So if London, Olave, Wilson, Burks, Dotson, if those guys are gone, then you're talking that's my next option. I'm taking him out of that kind of that second tier in a way.
Gotcha.
Because he's 6'4", 208. He is as fluid as you can find for a player of that size. I mean, at the Senior Bowl in one-on-one situations, he's tripping up in the routes because he's getting pressed at the line of scrimmage, but he's fighting off that press with his arms, with his length, but he's keeping his balance by using his arms and pushing off the ground. Like, you just don't see that with receivers. But then he's got the straight line speed, the explosiveness with the vertical jump and everything. So I think you look at that guy and you say, this might be like my next Kenny Golladay in a sense.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that's his pro comparison, but you might get a guy like that at 32, 34 and get that production that we saw from him here in Detroit.
Good stuff right there. So Let's go ahead and just go shift to the combine real quick. It just ended. I know you were out there scouting. Who were some guys that really impressed you after, first off, going into the combine, who were you eager to see? And then after the combine, who did you walk away feeling impressed by?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously defensively, like Kalen Barnes was the guy from Baylor that we all thought was going to run a 4.2, set the record. He was close. He ran a 4.23. But, when I look at a guy like Tariq Woolen from UTSA running a 6.4, running a 4.26 40, I mean, that's just insane to me. So the fact that this guy could be, a top 100 pick and you could get him at 66 or potentially somewhere in that fourth round, like that's great value in this draft. And maybe he won't. Maybe he'll shoot up because of the combine, but that's great value because you got a guy that can press. You've got a guy that's got the long speed and the burst to recover. And that was the problem with previous guys like Tabor when we drafted him in the second round. He had no speed. So when he got beat because his press didn't work, he couldn't recover and he'd get beat. So I think with Woolen, he was somebody that was like, I've heard great things about him. I've had many people reach out to me and say, keep tabs on this guy. And I saw him down at the Senior Bowl and I was like, okay, good reps, whatever. But then you see it like the athletic ability right there in person and you're like, oh my God, this guy is legit. So, like, he really caught my eye. But from the receiver standpoint, I mean, I was doing a live show when Chris Olave was running, and I watched him run a 4.29, and I was like, that was the unofficial time. But seeing that, I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Yeah. And, like, he's, I think, the most forgotten player in this draft. And I think when he came out, if he would have came out last year, he would have probably been a top 25 pick. Mm-hmm. He's probably a top 25 pick this year. And, like, you just talk about consistency. So Zion Johnson is, for me, Mr. Consistent on the offensive line. Here with Chris Olave, he's Mr. Consistent at the wide receiver position. Like just a natural separator, goes up there and gets it, really good route runner, and you see the speed now, and you're just like, man, I need this guy. So if he was there at 32, I would be on cloud 9, but I don't think he will be. But just to see that, it was like, wow, like shoot him up boards. He might even be the first guy off the board.
Now that is, what we got. There are so many questions I want to ask this guy because he's just throwing an overload of intelligent information at you guys. But there's another guy that I was looking at. Let's just say the Lions don't go with Hutchinson or Thibodeau with that first pick. Mm-hmm. Let's say they do something really wacky or they trade back or whatnot. There's a guy that I've really been looking at since the Senior Bowl who I think the Lions should.
I'm trying to think of who you're coming up with here.
I can't lie. I've been a fan of Boye Mafe.
Okay.
How much do you know about him? What have you seen from him that makes him make him somebody that's gonna jump off the charts, glaring? Like, what makes him special? If there is anything that does make him special.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think back to a couple years ago when Harold Landry was coming out of Boston College. Mm-hmm. I had him as my 7th ranked player that year. He was a top 10 pick for me. He ended up falling to like pick 52 or whatever it was to the Tennessee Titans, and he just got paid, an $80 million extension. But you saw a lot of flexibility within his game. You saw a guy that was able to hit a long arm and at times even translate a little speed to power. With Boye Mafe, it's more so speed than power with his game, but there were times that he was able to do it down at the Senior Bowl and kind of hit that bull rush. I even think he hit like Trevor Penning with it, if I remember correctly. But with him, it's just you see this flexibility, and you love guys that can stand up off the edge and bring their center of gravity from up here to down here. And they can get into the chest plate of offensive linemen, and they're just able to win with leverage a little bit better and kind of win at that point of attack. And I think that's what Boyd does really well. He's an explosive athlete. He's got the power, the speed. It all kind of blends together. And I don't know if they would necessarily take him with that first pick, but if let's say they did trade back and they took Kyle Hamilton, or they took him at 2. And you got to 32 and Boye Mafe's there. I mean,
I'm thinking maybe late first round, early second round, something like that. Because I don't think he's gonna be in that top tier talent. But like, if they didn't get one of those edge rushers with that earlier pick, I was thinking like, hey, this is somebody that maybe if he's down there in that second round,
right?
Hey, why not?
No, and I'm not opposed to it. I mean, again, like. You look at, and like I have such a hard time when I do like these mock draft simulators and like talking football. I always bring up Senior Bowl guys because it's just I believe that this regime believes in the Senior Bowl practices, and they believe in getting that firsthand look. And the fact that they got whether they were on the roster or not, they were on the Jets roster or whatever. I believe that they fully got a full scope of everything on every player possible down there, and we're going to see a handful of guys from the Senior Bowl on our team next year.
Sounds good. Well, hey, Russ, thank you for taking your time to come out here and speak with us. Right now, we got to get you back in here before the draft. You know, we got a few weeks before that, but right now, before some of these guys have their pro days and whatnot, you're in Brad Holmes' seat. Who you taking?
Well, if I'm sitting there at 2, if he's there, I'm taking Aiden Hutchinson. I think he's the best player in the draft, and we kind of already talked about him to why I would take him. But if he's not, I'm taking Kayvon. I need an edge rusher. We've never really had an edge rusher. Honestly, it feels like since like Kyle Vanden Bosch. Like honestly, like it feels like we have not had a consistent presence. I lied, Ziggy Ansah, but we haven't had a consistent presence off the edge. So it's just one of those things where it's like we need to get that guy that can take our defense to the next level. You look at the teams that are winning Super Bowls, getting deep into the playoffs, they've got a pass rush. They've got a developed defense that can go out there and get after it. And that's what we need here with Kayvon or Aiden. And I think we're kind of overthinking it with, Jordan Davis or Kyle Hamilton. I love playing the what ifs. It's great to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not like discrediting your questions or anything. It's a fun exercise, but at the end of the day, they can't overthink this. Take one of the 2 best players and move on.
That's you know what? That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be the smartest person in the room. I have my feelings about Aiden.
You're not Bob Quinn with the baseball bat?
I mean, I have my feelings about Aiden, but like if Kayvon, let's just say, for instance, Kayvon did go 1.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you got to take Hutchinson. So we don't try to overthink this and go get Hamilton or Davis.
Yep.
No, just
take your guy.
Take your guy. Move on.
Yep.
You get those other luxury picks later. You need that. You need that rush.
Yep.
So there it is.
Trust the tape.
Trust the tape. Well, hey, thanks again. This is Kory Woods, the Woodward Sports Network, with your Detroit Lions Royal Woodward Report special draft edition 1.0 with NFL scout Russell Brown. Hey, check you guys next time.